Hello students, welcome to Science Learning Gateway. I hope you all are doing good. Today we'll continue with the same chapter of Class 8 Geography, chapter number 2, Lithosphere. In part 1 of this chapter, I have covered few of the topics and rest of the topic we'll cover in this tutorial. So let's begin our chapter. Before starting, I have a small request from you all. If you're really liking my tutorial and channel, then please like it and share it with your friends also, and don't forget to click on the bell icon so that whenever I will be uploading a video, you'll get the notification for that. So this was our chapter number 2, Lithosphere. In this we have read about the 3 layers of the earth: crust, mantle, core. Then we have read about the types of rocks: sedimentary rocks, metamorphic rocks, igneous rocks. And now we'll start with the forces of the earth crust. Means what are the forces which are present in the earth crust? So there are 2 types of forces which will affect the earth crust, and the name of the 2 forces are external forces and internal forces. From the word internal, you can understand that this force will act inside the earth, and external forces will be acting on the earth in the outer surface. External means outside, it will act outside, and internal forces will act inside. So first we'll start with internal forces. These are the forces which originate inside the earth crust. Means they will start inside the earth crust, they will take their shape inside the earth crust, but they affect the outer surface of the earth. These forces will originate inside the earth crust and influence the surface features of the earth. Means it will start in the inside, but it can affect the surface of the earth. Examples of internal forces are volcanoes, earthquakes. The internal forces are also called endogenic forces. Since this force takes place inside the crust of the earth, so it is also called endogenic forces. Examples: earthquake and volcanoes. Now first we'll start with volcanoes. What are volcanoes? You can look at this diagram of volcano, structure of a volcano. In this, one vent is there. You can see a tube-like structure. This is the vent through which the magma and the other gases will come out from the volcano, and these are called the side vents. They are present on the side. One funnel-shaped structure is present at the top, that is called the crater, through which the different types of gases and ash will be coming out from this. You can look at this diagram of structure of volcano. This is a tube-like structure. This is called the vent or the opening. And this funnel type of opening over there at the top of the vent is called the crater or cone. Okay, its shape is like a cone or funnel, so it is called a crater. And what are the things which are coming out from the volcanoes? Ash, gas, these things will be coming out from the volcanoes. And this is the lava. This is the liquid part which is coming out from the volcano, and this at the bottom we have the magma chamber. Over there magma will be present, and through this opening this magma, ash and gases will come out on the surface of the earth. So this is the structure of the volcano. About the volcano, it is a vent or narrow opening in the earth crust connected by a pipe to an underlying magma chamber through which magma, rock fragments, lava, ash, streams, flames and other gases are emitted from the interior of the earth. So what is a volcano? It is a vent or a narrow opening through which present in the earth crust and is connected by a pipe to an underlying magma chamber. This is a magma chamber that is connected through a pipe, and through this pipe, what are the things which will come out from this pipe? Magma, rock materials, lava, gas, ash, those things will come out on the surface of the earth. The passage in the earth crust through which magma and other volcanic materials are ejected is called vent. This tube-like structure or the passage, it is called the vent through which the materials will come out from the magma chamber. The funnel-shaped hollow at the top of the cone of a volcano is called crater. This one is called the crater, which is present at the top. The funnel-shaped structure like a cone is called the crater. A large basin-shaped crater bounded by steep sides is called the caldera. Okay, one more structure is there that is not given in the diagram of caldera. It is a basin-shaped crater, means like crater only, but the shape will be like basin, bounded by steep sides. That is called caldera. So you can mark these things in your textbook. Now we will read about the types of the volcanoes. So, on the basis of the periodicity, or frequency of eruption of volcanoes are classified into 3 types. Periodicity means its occurrence, means when it will occur. Time means at what time it will occur. Periodicity means after what time it will repeat itself. or frequency means what will be its frequency, or power means it is more destructive or less destructive. On the basis of that, volcanoes are classified to three types. So what are the three types of volcanoes? Active volcanoes, dormant volcanoes, and extinct volcanoes. From the word active, you can understand that it is very active and destructive in nature, right? The volcanoes which constantly eject lava, gases, and ashes are known as active volcanoes. So these volcanoes will constantly, means every time they will eject these gases, lava, gases, and ashes are called active volcanoes. There are about how many types of active volcanoes? 600 active volcanoes in the world. Examples of active volcanoes are Mount Stromboli, Mount Etna in Italy, Helens in USA, Mauna Loa in Hawaiian Islands, Pinatubo in Philippines, etc. So you can remember these two, Mount Stromboli and Mount Etna. These two volcanoes you can remember for active volcanoes. So what is the definition? They will eject constantly. They will eject lava, gases, and ashes, and there are about 600 active volcanoes. Next, we'll read about the dormant volcanoes. Dormant means inactive. Okay, they are not active at all. The dormant volcanoes are those which have erupted in the past, means these volcanoes were there in the past and likely to erupt again in the future, but have remained inactive for fairly long periods. Dormant means inactive. Okay, now they are inactive for a long period of time. These volcanoes were active in the past, but now they are inactive, and in the future again these volcanoes can become active. So those are called dormant volcanoes. For example, around 50 years ago these dormant volcanoes were active, but now it is not active from the last 50 years. But in the future again it is possible that they will become active, they can take place. Examples of dormant volcanoes are Mounts Vesuvius in Italy, Mount Fujiyama in Japan, Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, Mount Krakatoa in Indonesia. At least two names you can remember. This one is easy, I think so. Mount Fujiyama in Japan, Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. These two you can remember. Next, we have extinct volcanoes. Extinct means which is not present at all now. Extinct. They have extinct now. Like dinosaurs, they have extinct now. Like that, we have extinct volcanoes. Extinct volcanoes are those which were active in the remote geological periods. Means during the past they were active, but these are not likely to be active once again. Means no more. They cannot come back again. Okay, so they have extinct. Example, Ngorongoro in Tanzania, Arthur's Seat in Scotland. You can remember the name of these, any one or any two extinct volcanoes. Next, what we have, super volcanic eruptions of the world. So these are the facts. Now these are the very super volcanic eruptions which have been taken in the world. Mount Vesuvius in Italy, Mount Krakatoa in Indonesia, Mount Pili in West Indies, Mount Fujiyama or Fuji, a volcano worshipped by people of Japan. This volcano, Mount Fujiyama or Fuji, it is a volcano. It is been worshipped by the people of Japan. Next, we have the volcanic materials. Means what are the things which are coming out from the volcanoes in the earth's surface? The materials ejecting out from the volcanoes are of three types. So three types of materials come out from the volcanoes. What are those three types? It can be solid, it can be liquid, and it can be gases. So what are the examples of the solid materials which come out from the volcanoes? Volcanic bombs, cinders, scoria, pumice, dust, and ash. I think this volcanic bomb you can remember. Dust, ash. At least 2-3 names you should write for that types of the solid volcanoes. Next, we have liquid. Liquid, only lava will come out in the form of liquid. And gases, what are the gases which are coming out from the volcano? Sulfur, hydrogen, and carbon dioxide. These are the gases which are coming out from the volcano. Next, we have distribution of volcanoes. Means where these volcanoes are present. Distribution means where they are present. Volcanoes occur in many regions of the world, including icelands, young mountain ranges, and plateaus of the continents. Okay, they can occur in the various regions of the world, including they can be present in the icelands, in the mountain ranges also they can be present, and in the plateaus of the continents also they are present. The most important regions are the circum-Pacific belt or Pacific ring of fire. Okay, in the circum-Pacific belt or Pacific ring of fire, what are the other parts which are included over there? Coastal margins of the Pacific Ocean consisting of Philippines, Japan, USA, Central America, South America, etc. So these countries come under the circum-Pacific belt. Now we have the mid-Atlantic belt. In mid Atlantic belt, Iceland and West Indies comes. And in mid continental belt, which are the countries? Italy, Spain, France, Greece, Turkey, etc. These countries come under mid continental belts. And in important islands, Hawaii and Indonesia. So in these areas the volcanoes are present. Distribution of volcanoes are there in these areas. Next, we'll start with our discussion with earthquakes. What are earthquakes? You have heard about many times that in this place earthquake is there. We have read that in Delhi earthquake. Sometimes in the news channel you can see that earthquake news and all, that it is causing great loss of life and property. So many houses are broken because of earthquake, and so and so. Okay, so what is earthquake? Earthquake is a shock or series of shocks or tremors due to sudden movement of crustal rocks generated in the crust or mantle. Whenever there will be some movement in the tectonic plates in the earth crust, what happens? Earthquake will happen in the earth crust. So it is a type of shock or series of, sometimes one time shock will come, again one or two three shocks will come because of the earthquake. So it happens because of the movement of the rocks which are present in the crust or in the mantle areas. Okay, so you should remember that earthquake is a shock or series of shock or tremors due to sudden movement of crustal rocks generated within the crust or the mantle. That you can underline, that you can mark in your textbook from here to here. This is the definition of earthquake. The point of origin of the earthquake in the earth crust is called the seismic focus or hypocenter. Means where the earthquake will originate in the earth crust. When the earthquake will originate, the point of origin means where it will start, that point is called seismic focus or hypocenter. Now, the point on the earth's surface vertically above the seismic focus is called the epicenter. First we have the seismic focus where the earthquake will start, its point of origin. After that, one more point is there, that is called epicenter. It will be just above the seismic focus. The scientific study of earthquake is called seismology. This is also very important. Suppose in the question it will be asked what is seismology, then you have to write the scientific study of earthquake. The study of earthquake is called seismology. For example, the study of fossil is called paleontology. Like that only, the scientific study of earthquake is called seismology. The origin, time, velocity and direction of seismic waves are recorded by an instrument called seismograph. Now, seismograph, like for measuring the temperature, we need thermometer. For measuring the seismic waves and its origin, time, velocity, etc., seismograph is an instrument which is used to do that. Now we'll read about the causes of the earthquakes. What are the causes of the earthquakes? You can see in this diagram over there the earthquake has taken place, the house is broken, so much loss of life and property is there. Their houses are broken. Many peoples have been rescued from this place. They have damage of life and property can be easily seen on this diagram. Now we'll read about the causes of the earthquake. The first we have the plate tectonics. The first cause is plate tectonics. So what is plate tectonics? The earth crust consists of many major and minor plates. Means in the earth crust, many major, big and minor means small plates are present. These plates are not dynamic places and are the primary location of earthquake activity. Okay, means in these plate boundaries what happens, these are the primary location of earthquake activity. Circum-Pacific belt means over there the earthquake activity will start. How the earthquake can begin and all that can start. Next we have the volcanic eruption. Volcanic earthquakes are caused by gas explosion. So how this type of earthquake can occur? It can occur by gas explosion. Example is Krakatoa volcano of Indonesia. Because of gas explosion, this volcano has been taken place. Next we will read about faulting. This is also one of the major cause of earthquake, faulting. A fault consists of a fracture in the rock. Fracture means cracks in the rock. Along with a great deal of displacement take place. Earthquake occur when the movement of plates takes place along a line of fracture. So whenever the movement of the plate will take place along the line of the fracture, then that time also earthquake can occur. Example, St. Andreas Fault of California in USA. Next, some of the man-made factors are also responsible for earthquake. So what are the man-made factors which are responsible for the earthquake? Over interaction of man with nature is also one of the main cause of occurrence of many of the earthquakes. The extraction of minerals means people are taking out the minerals from the earth crust, they're extracting the minerals from the earth crust. Deep underground mining is also going on for the golds and all. Huge dams and reservoirs, making of dams and reservoirs. Nuclear tests made by nuclear scientists, these can also lead to earthquakes. Example, Koina Dam in Maharashtra, Hoover Dam in USA. These are the examples of the earthquake because of the construction of the dams over there. Now we'll read about earthquake waves. What are earthquake waves? The earthquake or seismic waves originate in the seismic focus and travel towards the epicenter in ripples or or concentric circles. So what happened? The earthquake, or these are also known as seismic waves, they originate where? In the seismic focus or the hypocenter, right? And they travel along the epicenter in ripples or in the form of concentric circles. The three important earthquake waves are, now we'll read about the three types of important earthquake waves. What are the names of the three types of important earthquake waves? Primary waves, secondary waves, and surface waves. Okay, primary waves, short form is PW. Primary waves are also known as longitudinal or compressional waves. Okay, primary waves are also known as longitudinal or compressional waves. These are the fastest earthquake waves and the first waves to reach the surface. These are very fast in nature. They will reach the earth surface first. Okay, they are very fast. They can pass through solid, liquid, or gaseous matters also. So these primary waves are very fast. They will reach the surface first, and they can even pass through solid, liquid, or gaseous matters also. About the next wave we will read, that is the secondary wave. Short form is SW. Secondary waves are also known as transverse or distortional waves. These are also known as transverse or distortional waves. These waves cannot pass through liquids. As we have read that the primary waves can pass through solid, liquid and gas, but the secondary waves cannot pass through the liquids. They reach the epicenter after the primary waves. First the primary wave will reach, after that second number will be for the secondary wave, after that secondary wave will reach. Now we'll read about the third type of wave, that is called the surface wave. LW. It is written, its short form is LW. Surface waves are also known as long waves. Since it is known as long waves, that's why they have given the symbol LW. They are the slowest earthquake waves. They are very slow. Slower than the all two we have read, but are responsible for the highest destruction on the surface of the earth. They are slow, but they cause a large number of destruction on the surface of the earth. Okay. Now, about Richter scale, you have heard that about what is Richter scale. Richter scale is a scale which is used to measure the magnitude and intensity of the earthquake. In news channel, maybe many times you have read that on the Richter scale, the value of earthquake is 1, 2, 3.5, etc. So this is measured by using the Richter scale. This point you can remember this one that about Richter scale is used to measure the magnitude and intensity of earthquake. The earthquakes are very dangerous and destructive. Yes, we all know that it is very dangerous and it causes a great destruction to life and property. They cause large scale death. Yes, death can also occur. Loss of property, houses will be broken down, vehicles will be broken down. Landslide can also occur because of earthquakes. Flash floods can occur. Damage to bridges can also occur. Even road damages, roads will be broken down. Railway tracks, railway lines will also get damaged because of the earthquake. So this was all about the earthquake. Next we'll start about tsunami. So now we'll start with the topic tsunami. What is tsunami? Tsunami is a large sea wave occasionally experienced along the coast of Japan. So tsunami is what? It is a large sea wave. Like a wave, it will be a very large sea wave. And generally it is experienced where? In the coast of Japan and in the other region caused by the underwater earthquake. Where some underwater earthquake will take place, in that region also tsunami can occur. So from the word tsunami, you can understand it is a large sea wave and generally it will occur in the coast of Japan. In Japanese language, tsunami means harbor waves. Okay, these are some of the facts about the tsunami. On 26 December 2004, a tsunami in the Indian Ocean swept the coastal lowlands of Indonesia, India, Sri Lanka and Thailand, etc. On 11th March 2011, also a tsunami in the Pacific Ocean caused huge damage in the eastern coastal region of Japan. Some seismic recording and centers of India. These are some of the areas where seismic recording centers are present. Gori Bidanur, Kodai Canal, Pune, Hyderabad and Dehradun. Now we'll read about the distribution of earthquake prone regions. Means in which of the areas, what are the regions where the earthquake prone areas are present. We'll read about the earthquake prone regions. The Circum-Pacific Belt. The Circum-Pacific Belt, the regions around the Pacific Ocean. So these countries come around there: New Zealand, Philippines, Japan, USA, Peru, etc. In the Mediterranean Belt, regions around the Mediterranean Sea, and Himalayan Belt, the Shivalik region of India. So these are the earthquake prone areas. You can look in the map given over there. These areas are major earthquake belts. Then this dot type of structure you can see over there, volcanoes can occur. External forces. Now we'll start with the second forces. About internal forces we have read about earthquakes, volcanoes and tsunamis. Now we'll start our discussion with the external forces. So what are external forces? The natural force that modify the surface of the earth. Okay, external forces are the natural forces that modify the surface of the earth, and the important external forces are temperature, wind, rainfall, snowfall, river, glacier, etc. Because these are the natural forces and they modify that, they change the surface of the earth. Example, you can remember 2-3 examples: temperature, wind, rainfall, river, glacier, etc. These forces act on the surface of the earth and constantly change its feature. Every time they will act on the surface of the earth and they will change the feature of the earth also. First we'll read about weathering. Weathering means breaking down of weathering. Simple, if you'll know the meaning of the weathering, then it is breaking down. Okay, breaking down. Generally soil, how it is formed? It is formed by the weathering of rocks, means breaking down of rocks. So weathering is a wearing away or breaking down or gradual disintegration of rocks by agents. So weathering is what? It is breaking down of rocks by agents. What helps the rocks to break down into small pieces? Temperature can break down, rainfall, wind, etc. These are the agents by which weathering of rocks can take place present in the atmosphere. The three types of weathering are. Now we have the three types of weathering. The first one is mechanical weathering, second is chemical weathering, and the third one is biological weathering. One by one we'll discuss all the types of weathering. First we'll discuss with the mechanical weathering. When the rock is broken and disintegrated without any chemical alteration, the process is called physical weathering or mechanical weathering. Means when the rocks will be broken down into small pieces without any chemical change. Alteration means without any chemical change. Then that process is called physical weathering or mechanical weathering. The important process of mechanical weathering are granular disintegration, block disintegration, and exfoliation. These are the three important processes of mechanical weathering. Granular disintegration means the rocks will be broken down into granules. Block, it can be broken down into block. And exfoliation, some of the changes will occur in the rock. The agents of mechanical weathering are, what are the agents which help in the mechanical weathering? Temperature, wind, frost, etc. Next we'll start with chemical weathering. In this, chemical agents will take place to disintegrate the rock. Chemical weathering is mainly brought about by the action of substances dissolved in rainwater. In rainwater, many minerals and salts are present. So those substances will help in the weathering of rocks by chemical weathering. This type of weathering results in changing the composition of the mineral present in the rocks. We all know that in the rocks minerals are present. If chemical weathering will take place, and then some of the changes will occur in the composition of minerals present in the rocks. There are 4 types of chemical weathering. They are oxidation, carbonation, hydration and solution. So in this chemical weathering we have to read about the 4 types of chemical weathering. So what are the names of the 4 types of chemical weathering? Oxidation, carbonation, hydration and solution. First we'll start with oxidation. From the word oxidation you can understand oxygen. In this type of chemical weathering, oxygen dissolved in water reacts with certain minerals, especially iron, to form oxides. Some in the rainwater or in the seawater, oxygen is present in the form of dissolved oxygen. Okay, so that oxygen will react with the minerals present in the rock. Generally, it will react with iron. Oxygen will react with iron. That rusting of iron, rusting of iron, corrosion of iron. In that, iron reacts with air and moisture. Over here also, oxygen will react with iron to form oxides. Next, we have carbonation. When the rainwater falls on limestone rocks, these are the type of sedimentary rocks. So when rainwater will fall on the limestone rocks, the calcium carbonate present in the rock absorbs carbon dioxide from rainwater and becomes calcium bicarbonate. In limestone, other name of chemical name of limestone is calcium carbonate. So calcium carbonate is present over there. When rainwater will fall on the calcium carbonate, it will react, and in the rainwater carbon dioxide is also present. When carbon dioxide will react with calcium carbonate, they will form calcium bicarbonate. Next we have hydration is a process by which some minerals in crystalline form absorb water. Okay, in some of the rocks minerals are present. What they will do, they will absorb water and become a powdery mass, and after absorbing water they will become like a powdery mass. Feldspar is a common rock forming crystalline mineral. One of the example over there is feldspar. It is a rock which forms crystalline minerals. Next we have solution. When the rain falls on the surface of the land, rainwater dissolves soluble minerals present in the rocks. Whenever rainwater will fall on the land, what the rainwater will do, it will dissolve the soluble minerals. The soluble minerals means which can be dissolved in water present in the rocks. And the third type of withering is biological. Biological means some living things are involved in this withering, like plants and animals. Living organisms like plants and animals and human beings play a role in one or another in the withering of rocks. So in biological withering, who plays an important role? Plants, animals and human beings. This type of withering includes both physical and chemical withering. Okay, so in this type we have to read about physical also and chemical also. Plants, growth and expansion of roots. In plants you all know that roots are present, so that roots also help in the weathering of rocks. Animals, burrowing animals, earthworms, they all live inside the soil, like rabbits, earthworms, etc. They make burrows and live inside the soil, so they also help in the weathering of rocks. Rabbits, rats, human beings, what the human beings do in search of mineral, they used to do that mining, quarrying, construction work. These also leads to biological weathering. Our next topic is denudation. So what is denudation? Okay, denudation, first we'll read about the agents of denudation. Denudation is the action of changing landscape or changing the surface of the earth by various natural agents such as rivers, glaciers, underground water. Denudation means some changes will occur in the surface of the earth. Denudation is the action of changing the landscape or changing the surface of the earth, and it will take place because of some natural agents like rivers, glaciers, underground water, wind, seawater, etc. The work of these natural agents are erosion. They help mostly in erosion. Transportation, first of all, erosion means carrying out of the soil or any other material. After that those substances will be transported, and after that they will be deposited. First erosion, carrying out, transportation, they will take place to another place, and in deposition it will be settled down. These processes produce distinct relief features. Because of these processes, some different types of features can be seen on the surface of the earth. First we'll read about the first, river. What is a river? A mass of fresh water flowing from its source to mouth along a definite course is called a river. You can underline in your textbook, a mass of fresh water flowing from its source to mouth. Source means from where it is originated to the mouth, where it is ending. Along a definite course is called a river. In river, fresh water is present, it will flow from source to mouth, is called a river. The river is most prominent agent of denudation. It is a very important natural agent of denudation, which brings about changes in the surface of the earth. The place where a river takes place, its birth is called source. Means from the river starts, it's called the source, and the mouth is a point where it meets sea or ocean. So what is mouth? It is a point where it meets the sea or the ocean. You can underline these things in your textbook. Tributaries. What are tributaries? Tributaries are the feeders or small streams which supply water to river along its course. Tributaries are small channels by which water will come out and they will supply water to river along its course. The point where a tributary joins a main river is called confluence. You can underline this one also. The point where a tributary will join the main river is called confluence. Now, the course of the river. The course of river from its source to mouth is divided into 3 stages. So, what are the 3 stages? The 3 stages are upper course, middle course and the lower course. So, there are 3 courses of river: upper, middle and lower. You can look in this diagram the stages of river course and associated landforms. Upper course, middle course and the lower course. in the upper course, V-shaped valley, George potholes, rapids, waterfall, river capture. You can see the V-shaped valley over there. In the middle course, transportation will be occur and some deposition will also be occur. The valley will widen. And third one, lower course, again over there deposition will be occur. This is transportation, in this deposition. Some of the fragments will deposited over there. One by one we'll discuss over here. The upper course, the vertical erosion is most common due to steep slopes leading to deepening of valleys. Okay, over there erosion, carrying away of materials will take place, which leads to deepening of the valleys. This V-shaped valley you can see, resulting in the formation of gorges, canyons, V-shaped valleys, waterfalls. Examples of waterfalls: Angel Falls, Niagara Falls, Jog Falls. These are the examples of waterfalls in the world. Then we have the middle course. In the middle course, what happens? Transportation will take place. The river path has a moderate slope and velocity is less than that in the upper course. The volume of the water increases when many tributaries join the main river. Definitely, when the water will come from the tributaries, when the many tributaries will join the main river, the volume of the water will increase. The main work of river in this case is transportation of sediments. When the level of the river water will increase, and what the river will do, they will transport the sediments and little deposition will also take place over there. Transportation and some deposition will take place in the middle course. The important landforms in these stages are alluvial fans, main dias. Okay, and now we'll read about the lower course where deposition will take place. In this stage, the slope of the river course is very minimum. The volume of river water is more and deposition is the main work of the river. Over there, what is the main work of river? In the lower course, deposition. The important landforms in this course are floodplains, natural leaves, oxbow lakes, deltas. Sundarban Delta, Nile Delta, you have heard about these words about Sundarban Delta and the Nile Delta. The work of river is called fluvial cycle. So what is fluvial cycle? The work of river is called fluvial cycle. You have to remember this one. So what are the three types of courses of river? Upper course, middle course and the lower course. In the upper course, the main work of river is erosion. And in the middle course, the main work of river is transportation and some deposition will also take place. And in the lower course, the main work of river will be deposition only. Okay. Then this fluvial cycle, you should remember the work of river is called fluvial cycle. Now, estuary and delta. What is estuary and delta? The tidal mouth of river broadening into sea and ocean. When the mouth of the river will become into a sea or ocean, that is called a estuary. And what is delta? A fan-shaped low-lying area of deposits at the river mouth is called a delta. Now we'll read about glaciers. What are glaciers? Glaciers are slow-moving, compacted mass of ice and snow found in the high mountains and polar region. In the colder region, in the high mountains or in the polar region, glaciers can be seen. They are slow-moving, compacted mass of like ice. They will move very slowly and they will be like mass of ice. The mass of ice or snow is pulled down by the weight and due to the force of gravity. If ice is present because of its weight and force of gravity, they are pull down the mountains. What are the types of glaciers? Glaciers are divided into two types: continental glaciers and mountain glaciers. Now we'll read about the continental glaciers and mountain glaciers. What are continental glaciers? Continental glaciers are extensive ice sheets found in polar regions. Example, Greenland and Antarctica. The continental glaciers will be found in the polar regions only and they are extensive ice sheets. They will look like ice sheet. And examples of continental grasslands are Greenland and Antarctica. Now we'll read about mountain or alpine or valley glaciers. First one is your continental, second one is your mountain glacier. This is also known as alpine or valley. The glaciers found in the polar regions are called mountain glaciers. Okay, these glaciers will be found in which region? In the polar regions. So these are called mountain glaciers. Glaciers as an agent of denudation performs the work of erosion. They are also one of the agent of denudation which brings changes, transformation in the surface of the earth. And the work of this glacier is in erosion also, transportation also and deposition also. The erosional work of glacier is mainly side cutting. So what is in erosion? What they used to do? They help in side cutting. The landforms resulting by this are Q-horn or Crete, U-shaped valleys, hanging valleys, rock-shaped valleys. When they used to do that side cutting, the landforms will change into U-shaped valleys in the shape of a letter U. The transformation and the deposition work of glacier goes almost together, means both the work of transportation and deposition glacier will do together only. The important depositional landforms produced by glaciers are, what are the important depositional landforms formed by glacier? Moraines, drumlines, esker, kames, outwash plains, till plains, etc. Moraines are the most important landforms of the glaciated region. You can underline this one in your textbook. Moraines are the most important landforms of the glaciated regions. Moraines are of four types: lateral moraines, medial moraines, ground moraines, and terminal moraines. So what are lateral moraines? Rock debris deposited along the sides of the glacial valleys. When the rocks will be deposited along the sides of the glacial valley, that is called lateral. Okay, so lateral means sides. Next we have medial moraines. So what are medial moraines? When two lateral moraines will meet together, they will form medial moraines. And what are ground moraines? Rock materials found on the floor or at the bottom of the glacial valley. Ground means when the rock materials will be found on the floor or on the bottom of the glacial valley, at that time they are called ground moraines. Terminal moraines, the glacial deposit found at the end of the glacier. Terminal means at the end, at the last point. So they are found in the end of the glacier. So these are called terminal moraines. The work of glacier is called glacial cycle. Like we have read about the work of river is called fluvial cycle, like that only the work of glacier is called glacial cycle. Now we'll read about the underground water. The water which is present under the soil, that is called underground water. Underground water is a subsoil water found on account of percolation or seepage of water into the ground. What happens when rain comes? That rain water goes inside the soil. The soil absorbs that rainwater, and that water is collected in the form of rainwater. The water which is present in the subsoil water found on account of percolation or seepage of water into the ground is called underground water. Underground water which seeps into the ground passes through various layers of rocks, and after the soil what we have? Rocks. And that underground water will pass through the various layers of the soil of the rocks. The rocks which allow the water to percolate is called pervious or porous rocks. But some of the rocks will only allow the water to go inside that to percolate, and those rocks are called pervious or porous rocks. And the rocks which do not allow the water inside are called impervious or non-porous rocks. The water pervious or porous rocks, the rocks which allow the water to percolate, okay, to go inside, are called pervious or porous rock. Just opposite you have to write for impervious or non-porous. They will not allow the water inside, are called impervious or non-porous rocks. The porous rock beds which hold large amount of underground water are called aquifer. This is also important. The porous rock bed which accumulate large amount of underground water are called aquifers. The pervious rocks allows and hold water and form springs. Okay, then what the pervious rocks do? They use to hold the water, and they can form springs also. A spring is a place where the underground water comes out naturally. You can see in many areas springs are there. Water spring, where the underground water will come out naturally. That place is called your spring. Next we'll read about the types of spring. Perennial spring, intermittent spring, hot spring, geysers, artesian wells. These are the types of the springs. Okay, what is perennial spring? It is a spring through which water comes out continuously. Perennial means all over the year. So it will, through this spring the water will come out continuously. Next we have intermittent spring. These are springs through which water comes out intermittently. Intermittent means not continuous, and they are also called periodic spring. Spring means time to time it will come out, not always. Okay, next we have the hot spring. Whenever warm or hot water comes out naturally, it is called hot spring. From the word hot you can understand, when the warm water or hot water will come out, it is called hot spring. Or thermal spring. Thermal means also hot. They are usually found near the volcanic regions. Where do we get the hot spring? Near the volcanic region. There only the water will become hot. Next we have the geysers. Geyser throw a jet of hot water like a fountain and steam into the air at regular or irregular intervals. Example, Old Faithful in Yellowstone National Park of USA. Geysers. In our house also geysers are there. We get hot water from that. Like that only geysers will give a jet of hot water like fountain. You all have seen the fountain, like in fountain how the water comes out. Like that in geyser the hot water will come out at regular or irregular intervals. Means sometime it will come, sometime again it will take some gap, and again it will come. Okay, you can remember this one, Old Faithful in Yellowstone National Park of USA. This is one of the geyser. Next, we have artesian wells. What are artesian wells? When underground water is stored in a basin-shaped layer between two non-porous rocks. Between two non-porous rocks, if some underground water will be stored, the water cannot come out naturally. If an artificial hole is made to pour to the porous rock, the water comes out like a fountain. These are called artesian wells. These wells are common in Australia. So how it will look like? Suppose we have two non-porous rocks. Okay, in between some water is collected, and in this we have some porous rock. If some hole is made artificially, if someone will make some hole in the porous rock, then water will come out. Okay, like fountain, the water will come out. This is called your artesian wells, and it is most common in Australia. In Australia it is very common. You can see in this diagram, this is aquifer, this is artesian well. You can see how the water is coming out. This is also impervious rock. Underground water performs the work of erosion, transportation and deposition. Now, this underground water like glacier, it will also perform the work of all the three things: erosion, transportation and deposition. The work of underground water is prominent in limestone region, where the limestone will be there. In the limestone region, where the sedimentary rocks we used to get, in that region the underground water will work very nicely. The important landforms associated with the underground water are, what are the important landforms over here? Lapis, sinkholes, limestone caves, stalactites, stalagmites, calcite pillars, etc. These are the important landforms. At least two examples you can remember, whichever is easy for you. Now we'll read about the limestone caves. This is the fact file. Akalgavi Ulavi caves of Uttara Kannada in Karnataka. You must have heard about this cave, limestone cave. Belium Bora caves of Andhra Pradesh. It is present in Andhra Pradesh. Relief features formed by underground water in limestone region is called crastopography. Okay, crust topography. Now we'll read about winds, sea waves. These are the two topics left which we'll do quickly. First one is our wind. So what are winds? The denudation work of wind is common in the arid or the desert areas. In the arid or the desert areas, we can see the wind, the fast flowing wind. When the winds of high velocity blow over desert areas, they erode, transport and deposit materials to produce different landforms. So when the wind will blow very fast, what they used to do? They used to carry along with them sand and soil particles, and they form the different landforms. The important landforms associated with the erosional work of wind are rock pedestals, mushroom rock, Essenelberg. These are the important landforms associated with wind. Rock pedestal, mushroom rocks, and one is your Essenelberg. The depositional landforms are sand dunes, longitudinal sand dunes, birchens and loess deposits. These are the depositional landforms. Okay, sand dunes, birchens. Now, what are birchens? Birchens are semicircular or crescent-shaped sand deposits, most common in the desert areas. These birchens can be seen in the desert areas, and they are semicircular or crescent-shaped. Losses in the sand particles found beyond the borders of deserts. Yellow soil in China. Work of wind is called Aeolian cycle. Aeolian, A-E-O-L-I-E-N, Aeolian cycle. Now the last topic of this chapter is sea waves. So what are sea waves? Like all other agents, sea waves also is also an important exogenic agent of denudation. Exogenic means from outside it will work. Exogenic, not endogenic. It is also one of the important agent of denudation. Sea waves are the regular undulation of water on the sea or ocean. The work of sea waves is significant along the seashore or the coast. Where do they work? They will work on the seashore areas or along the coast. The important landforms associated with sea waves are cliff, sea cave, sea stack, sea arc, headland, sandbars, beaches, lagoons. These are the important landforms associated with sea waves. So you can remember this one. Lagoon is very common. Sandbars is also common. Sea cave you can remember, beaches you can remember. These are the landform formed because of the sea waves. So we have completed the chapter. I hope you all have understood. Please go through the textbook once, give a reading to the textbook, then watch the video. After that, if you have any doubt, you can comment in the comment section. And if you want the question answers also, then comment in the comment section. Then I will upload the question answers for you all. And if you have any doubt in any terms and any topic, then also you can comment in the comment section. I will try to clear your doubt. Thank you for watching my channel. If this tutorial is helpful for you, then please share it with your friends, and if you liked it, then please click on the like button, and if you're new to my channel, subscribe it, and don't forget to click on the bell icon so that whenever I will be uploading a new video, you will get the notification for that. You can also connect with me through my Facebook page. The link I will provide in the description box. Thank you for watching my channel.